Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome out to tonight's training webinar. This is a webinar for everybody we're holding tonight here. This is Shade Foray. Of course, I'm here with Stephen Swenson, and yeah, it's a webinar that we wanted to conduct here, just about kind of the state of things right now with everything that's happening.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Tonight's topic, we have a lot of students and members and investors that are sending us emails and asking us, what we think is going to happen with the current situation. And we just really kind of want to talk with you guys tonight and kind of break down what we see, taking place within the tax sale market with what's going on with the current state.
Yeah. So for a lot of you, you may know us from videos that you've listened to or watched over YouTube or different other platforms, or you may be even somebody that's maybe been training with us in the past, possibly.
Yeah, and we can also have people who've never, this may be the first webinar that you've attended, maybe you've watched a couple of YouTube videos. And we first got our start, about 20 years ago or so. We attended our first tax sale, and me and Shade are cousins, and we grew up together since we were little kids. And so once we saw and attended that first tax sale, it was a strategy that we really wanted to pursue.
Yeah, in fact, I think at the time that we were getting involved too was right about the time the internet was beginning to make an impact around the world. As we saw counties, really the big change was county websites and searchable records, online. But aside from that, though, it took a while for us to figure all this out. I think that for a long time we were trying to find our way just like everybody else was, and eventually we began attending auctions, and things started to make more sense as we started to break down individual states. But yeah, eventually it led to us, though, providing training that we private labeled for a long time with seminar companies, which was a great way to reach a lot of people. We did that for a while, but it also had drawbacks.
Yeah, exactly. We did that for close to a decade, and then in around 2015, 2016, we quit working with the seminar companies, and we decided to offer essentially our program directly to the public just through taxsalesupport.com. And so that's kind of where we're at now, and probably some of the videos that you watched, have been done during that time frame.
Yeah. So enough with kind of who we are. If you're here for answers about how you think things will be affected, we can give some answers right now. For instance, we know how exactly it's affecting, the virus is affecting tax sales in the short term right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the main thing that's happened is the live auctions have been postponed. So many governments have put out mandates that are, most of the county and federal have put out mandates that are regulating groups, and so because of that, they can't conduct any of these live auctions. So a lot of these counties for the March auctions and even into some of April have just postponed those auctions, kind of waiting for for a better date.
Yeah, which we'll see how long this draws out for counties, because they're government entities, in terms of how fast they get back to work and fully operating. We don't know if it's going to be a couple weeks or if it's going to be, a couple months, for some. But either way, they're going to have to get back to work here pretty quick, because, we've got tax sales that have been postponed in a lot of states, and, they're going to have to do something about those.
Yeah, definitely. So, as far as the postponed auctions, those ones were still are kind of up in the air, but there still is a lot of opportunity with online auctions. There's been a couple of online auctions that have been postponed, but many of the online auctions are still in place, still doing bids.
Yeah, in fact, have been relatively unaffected by the changes and haven't been canceled. So that's been one good thing that's been happening. There's actually still quite a bit of bidding, and it's kind of a good time to be bidding. Really.
Yeah, well, we've actually seen over the last week or two some pretty good deals, because with people being nervous, there's less people bidding, and we'll explain about, kind of why some of those type of bidders drop off. But we've definitely seen some good deals being picked up. So this really could be a good time of year to be able to pick up, properties through online auctions.
Yeah, the online auctions I think are maybe seeing a little bit less competition with everybody. Well, first off, should probably back up here a step here. With the with the real estate market kind of taking a nosedive like it did, and kind of still being in the middle of it, a lot of people are uncertain about their money and about what's going on there with it. And I think it's going to lead to a lot of things there. But certainly one of the effects that seem to be happening right now is with everything we are seeing. Maybe it's fewer bidders to compete with in auctions. Maybe it's more deals coming out of some of the auctions this week.
Yeah. Well, there's definitely been some deals picked up, and I think there'll be deals over the next 30 days. But in addition to the online auctions, there's also a ton of opportunity with over the counter. Now, there has been a few county governments that aren't currently accepting bids at this time, but there's also many county governments that still are.
Yeah, so there are a few counties that have kind of shut down things altogether, but a lot of the ones that have over-the-counter inventory are still offering it like normal.
Yeah, well, and let's say that even if they aren't accepting bids right now, the lists are still open. You can still do all of the online research, so you can go through and get prepared right now. So as soon as they open in 2 weeks from now or 3 weeks from now or whenever it does, you can go ahead and get your bids in because you've already done all your research between now and then.
Yeah. Nobody else can place bids during that time either, so you don't have to worry about it getting taken out from underneath you.
So that's kind of the short-term effects that we've seen as far as over the next 30 days and what we currently are seeing. But what are the long-term effects? What's going to happen over the next 60, 90, 120 days?
Yeah, which and even further on beyond that. And I think it's one of the benefits, or at least it speaks to one of the strengths that tax sales are able to offer.
Yeah, exactly. Here's a quote from Benjamin Franklin that there are only two things certain in life: death and taxes.
Yeah, fortunately, tax sales are one of those things. I think there's always going to be a percentage of people that delinquent with their taxes, with their property taxes, and there's always going to be, this enforcement system in place, to deal with it. So it only makes sense. And when it comes to how this is affected, really, the main thing to keep in mind is that governments need the money, and it's not optional for them because it's money they use to operate. So even if they postpone sales for a little bit, they are going to still need to collect it here soon. But it also gives tax sales a certain invulnerable, I guess, makes them. Was invulnerable? Is that the right word there to changes in the market? They aren't affected, at least not negatively.
Yeah, well, the county still needs the money. Fire departments, police, school, transportation. All of that is going to be provided through usually through local property taxes. And so if those property taxes aren't paid, then suddenly the county is in a serious bind. They don't have the money for things like schools, and even if there's some type of relief through the federal government, through what's happening right now, it's still not going to be enough, and they're still going to need to collect those property taxes. I mean, it's part of the law. Yeah.
Really, counties have got three options. They're either going to, postpone the live sales, which we've seen a lot of them already do, and that's going to be for a good chunk here of March and maybe April, maybe all of it, maybe part of April. We don't know yet, but that's already happened here a lot with a lot of the live sales.
Well, and with these live sales, some of them have already postponed it and already set a date for May or June, kind of almost looking and planning on for that time frame. And I guess if something comes up, they'll readjust it. Others are just kind of waiting to see, because if they could do it sooner, they'd rather do it sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
So some are kind of saying, well, let's not set it for June, because if we can do it at the end of April, let's do it at the end of April.
Yeah. The other option that they have is they can switch over to what's called the sealed bidding system. This is basically a system that allows people to mail in bids, really. But it's something that can be implemented if they want to.
Yeah, there's actually quite a few states that have it written within state law, but it's not really used as much because most people just do the live auction. That's going to get, more money. But in some of these smaller counties and things like that, they still have used it, and it could be an option because it's within their state law, meaning that maybe within the state law they have to get a certain a certain law passed or something to do it on an online auction where they could do a sealed bid, and maybe it's not
easier to implement,
especially if it's a smaller sale.
Yeah.
So let's say they're only listing 10 or 15 properties. They might not want to create a real auction website to sell their properties. They might just do a sealed bid because most of the people that are attending the auction are only going to be the people that are local bidders anyway.
Yeah.
So
that would make sense.
But that could be an opportunity where us from out of state or outside of that area could participate in these kind of sales.
Yeah, sealed bids, the one downside to sealed bids is that you basically have to give your best bid in in what you send in, and so you don't really have a chance to see what other people are bidding and try to make decisions that way. You just have to put your best bid in, and because you're only going to get one chance.
Yeah, well, and really the best way to do that, kind of figure out where the property is and put in the best bid that's still going to make you profitable. And if you've done it, if you get it at your price, then perfect.
Yeah.
If you don't, then it's better off not buying it anyway. And you actually, in some ways, would spend less time than trying to go to the auction and participate in that way.
Yeah, that's true. In some ways, it probably could save you time if you just you do that. Of course, in a lot of cases, the only downside being that you've got to include payment in a lot of cases with sealed bids. It doesn't always have to be everything, but sometimes with sealed bid, it has to be everything.
Yeah, it kind of depends on what type of auction it is.
Yeah.
Some will just have you put a deposit. Some will go and you'll have a certain period of time to accept it, and then the next person will get. So it'll kind of depend on the auction if they require payment or not.
Yeah, the other option that counties have here is to move over to an online system, which this could only speed up the process we've already seen happening over the last many years, last decade plus. But just be for more of them, maybe to switch over here to online auctions.
Yeah, I'm sure the online auction providers are contacting the counties and saying, hey, this is the perfect reason why you should go ahead and switch to online auctions, and we can take care of this and still allow you to do the auction, and get the money coming in.
Yeah, because it would simplify a lot of things for counties if they can just put them online. But really, I think that I think over the last 20 plus years, we've seen some different changes in the real estate market. We saw certainly the real estate crash, of 2007 and 8. And with tax sales, I would say that it was never affected negatively. In fact, if anything, really, we saw an increase in the number of properties that ended up going, we saw an increase in the size of tax sale lists and an increase in the number of properties that were going to sell.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even though there's changes in the market, and there can even be changes within the tax sale market, the strategy investment remains the same, and the type of returns or the advantages all remain the same as well. And so, in a more aggressive market, you're going to have more competition, but it's still going to be the best way to acquire property. But in a slower market, you can actually get better deals or better interest rates because there is going to be less competition, or there could be more properties available, or a combination, usually a combination of both.
Yeah, well, and I think that, because the crash in 2007-8 was specifically like a real estate related crash, that had a lot to do, I think, with the influx that we saw of properties that were suddenly added, and what we saw happening was we saw more properties, added to the list. We saw more homes, that were added to the list, and we even saw an increase in the number of mortgage properties that were starting to go to the tax sale, which we hadn't seen that before. That was something that was kind of new, but really, I think these lenders had so many different properties that they were losing track of, it seemed like.
Well, and you had the real estate crash, but then also that, after that, you had the recession that followed. And so, you're not just talking about 2008, that's May of when it happened, but it really stretched on for a lot longer than that, probably, 2013, 14, or even later than that before, it fully recovered.
Yeah, I think that's true too. Really, the increase that we kind of saw in list size and properties had seemed to continue on from that time. And with this kind of a crash, we'll have to see exactly what the result is, because it's a little bit different from last time, and we'll have to see how fast the recovery is too, because that could play a big role.
Well, and I think, yeah, and it's all going to depend on how soon, us as Americans can get back to work. Luckily with us, we're able to continually running our business just as normal, because we have a small staff, but there's so many other people that are hurting right now and that are not able to essentially,
Yeah, it's true.
If we can get this thing rolling pretty quickly, then I think we're going to have a better chance. And of course, this is all speculation.
Yeah, our hearts really do go out though to a lot of you that are directly affected by the shutdown, because there are a lot of people in a lot of industries that are suddenly have no income, and that's a scary thought, that suddenly everything can shut down and you just don't have any income.
Well, and part, that's part of the reason why, I've always loved real estate, is because, you need three things to survive: food, water, and shelter. And if you're buying and selling real estate, if you're involved within real estate, then, you are really providing one of those needs.
Yeah, it's true. And certainly there's always going to be a need for, for shelter, especially at that low end, starting homes. So starter homes are always going to be a market that will be hot. There will always be buyers for, for starter homes and things like that. But what may happen as a result of changes in the economy is we're hoping that it has an effect on the number of bidders or the types of bidders that we're dealing with.
Yeah, well, we've seen that in the past. That's definitely for sure. The first group of bidders that we usually see drop off are what we call the more money than sense. These are people that, attend the auction, have huge bankrolls, and just end up, overbidding on all types of properties. In fact, if you see two bidders going and spending more for the property than the property is valued, it's probably a more money than sense bidder.
Yeah. It's either a more money than sense bidder, or it's somebody that has a personal interest in the property, because it just doesn't make any sense other than that. Either you have to have that specific property, you're going to pay more than, market for it, if you have to.
Yeah. Next one would be what we call fair weathered. And these are the people that, just kind of attend tax sales occasionally, maybe do it once or twice a year, maybe skip a year.
Yeah. Well, what we've really seen is just an influx in competition in general, and so we're hoping that it can shake off some of that competition.
Yeah, the last group would be the first timers, and you see a lot of these people, especially within a good economy, because instead of putting their money into stock or something like that, they hear about tax liens, they hear about the returns, and so you'll have a flux of new investors that are attending the auction. And really, between these type of investors, these are the ones that end up overpaying for property, that make auctions more competitive than they should be. And when you eliminate these people, then you are really just stuck with the investors.
Yeah. The other thing we think we're going to see here is maybe more property, going to auction as a result of economic slowdown. One of the first things people will get rid of sometimes is a piece of land or something like that doesn't directly affect them.
Yeah, well, and when it comes to with attending the auction and just having investors there, then investors know how much things are priced, and so you're not going to get these outrageous prices, or you're not going to bid down the interest rates to nothing, because the only people that are investing there are the investors, which are looking at it from numbers and
yeah, the numbers either make sense or they don't. See, one of the things that we've struggled with, I think, in the last 12 months is we look at different results, or we participate in different auctions. a lot of times we see things where the numbers just don't really make sense. You know, people are paying more than would be reasonable or what would make any sense. And so, you know, that's become quite common, you know, and you know, what we're hoping to see is maybe a decrease in some of that. But the effect on tax liens could result in a larger number of tax liens being issued. You know, but hopefully it will result in maybe less competition for those to buy them.
Yeah, well, and one thing about tax liens is, you know, the rate of return isn't, you know, dictated by the financial market, by the stock market, by anything like that. It's dictated by the state law. And so, you know, in Florida, it's going to be 18%. In these other states, it's going to be, you know, whatever the state mandate is. And so,
or whatever you bid it down to.
yeah, well, you know, in the guarantee, and then it's just a matter of competition to where that bids down to.
Yeah.
But it's not dictated by, the point I'm trying to make is it's not dictated by the market conditions. It's only dictated by the state law and the competition there with the sale.
Yeah.
You know, and so if there's less competition, if there's more properties, then that means we're going to get higher interest rates.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it should result in more opportunities here. You know, with tax deeds, you know, I think we will see some, you know, an increase in some of the properties that will go to auction. You know, and that can be everything from, you know, from pieces of land, you know, to we always see homes and things like that go to foreclosure. Maybe we'll see an increase in that. I don't know.
Yeah, well, usually in a slower economy, things like second homes, rental property, building lots, land, things like that are owners are less, you know, are more likely to let go than in a better economy. You know, unless it's somebody's single family home that they're currently living in, you know, if they need to make a choice between, you know, paying their bills or just letting, you know, a house go that grandma used to own, where they haven't visited for years, they're more likely to let that go than, you know, some vacant house that's sitting empty versus somebody that's living within the property. And so you'll have more of those type of properties that go to auction where they, you know, there isn't a personal attachment in the property as far as somebody living in it.
Yeah, yeah. You know, I think we should see an increased number of actual deeds, you know, being created, and so that should also, you know, I think, create some better opportunities here.
Well, and then when you have, you know, less competition, that's going to result in not only better deals at the auction, but also more opportunity over the counter as well. So, you know, there is kind of a trickle down effect through the less competition at the deed sales. In fact, to kind of give you guys an idea, we were going through some of our success stories this week, just kind of looking back at some of the success stories of students that we had between 2008, 2010. And we, you know, here's a couple of pretty good ones we thought we could, you know, show you.
Yeah, basically we're looking at are both a couple of homes, you know, that were purchased. You know, on the left here, it was one of our students, you know, Ann Carlton, back in that day, that purchased this home for about $13,500. It was currently valued, they thought, at about $50,000, but that it had been estimated as high as $110,000 in recent years. And so I think that was right around 2007 or 2008.
No, it was a little bit after then, because it had already crashed by that point. So this was more around 2010, you know, because by that point it had been worth $110,000 in around 2007, 2008, you know, and then as that Florida market dropped, they purchased it around 2010, where it was still kind of hitting that bottom of the market. If you remember, there in Florida, it kind of took a little while. But, you know, the thing about it is within a couple of years of owning that, it rose back up within value. So even at the price they purchased it, you know, it was still a great value, but there was a lot more value in the property than it was currently showing, because that's where kind of Florida hit, at least in this area, at the very bottom. But the property on the right was purchased for $8,500, excuse me, and this was actually a newer property that probably in today's auction would go for $40,000 or $50,000. Here are some Arizona tax liens, kind of give you an idea of the different interest amounts earned. You know, here in 2013, the tax liens on average earned 7.29% return. But then in 2020, from what we could see, they earned about 2.3% return. So at that time, there was less competition, resulted in better returns.
Well, and if we were to look back even further, let's say we were to look back to 2010, the numbers would have been a little bit higher even then. And it's this constant increase in competition that we're seeing. But the problem with it is that you can get competition, but once it gets up to levels that, beyond what really makes sense, then the investment stops making sense for the time and effort you're putting into it. And so in other words, it at 7% or 10% it makes sense, but when you start getting numbers down at 2%, it stops being worth it, because other investments are going to be more profitable.
Yeah, and of course this is the average, so there's some that we're doing lower and some that are higher. But Shade makes a real good point. With these are New Jersey, and these are actually what's called a premium bid. I mean, this was bidded over the amount of the tax lien certificate. And back in 2013, it was around $2,900, but in 2019, it was almost $8,000.
Yeah, which we see kind of a similar change, even though it's different mediums here with the premium versus, the interest rate. Still, you can kind of see, you can still see the change, that's happened there. And a lot of it really, if we were to look at it, a lot of it happened probably even in the last 18 months, maybe to 24 months. I mean, it's been more dramatic, I think in the last, more recently, we've seen this, this uptick in competition.
Yeah, it's definitely been pretty competitive over the last 12 months or so. Kind of the same thing going on with Maryland as well, with the premium bid going from not quite as high, but still probably what, 40% or maybe higher or so.
Yeah.
From 1,800 to 3,600.
Yeah, and so again, it was actually, all of the changes we see in the competition are pretty similar across the board. It's not like we just saw one state that was affected and another state that's not really. And I think we could probably look at every tax sale just about that people can access it, would see the same increase.
Yeah, well, definitely in a better economy, you're going to have more competition. Now, tax sale investing still, one of the best ways to get returns to buy property, but in a slower market, that doesn't mean that it's the end of the world for the tax sale investor.
Yeah. With the market taking a nosedive, trillions of dollars were just lost. And, we think this will, in the end, it's going to take a while to recover. We think that this will have an effect on maybe the number of bidders that we're competing with directly, but also we're going to be seeing an increased number of sales that they're trying to cram into the same number of months.
Yeah, that's where I think we're going to see a huge influx. Not only are we going to see all of those different types of bidders that we talked about earlier that end up dropping off, but like Shade mentioned, and it's a good point, we're going to see this huge influx where property auctions from March, maybe April, hopefully it doesn't go any further than that, but where May and June, these summer months, you're going to have 2 or 3 extra months worth of auctions crammed in, all happening at one time. So there's going to be double the auctions taking place during this time, which, even if there was the same amount of bidders with double auctions, there's not going to be enough bidders to attend all the auctions. But if there's going to be less bidders, they're really the summer months, between May, to August, we're predicting and we're hoping that those are going to be some of the best months for tax sale investing. And the one thing about it is when you're, I'm glad that I'm in the business where we're buying real estate.
Yeah.
Because when it comes to this, we can buy homes, we can buy rentals. It's a good place to put your money where you're not worrying what's happening in the stock market.
You can buy land, you can make money with just land. You can make money with any kind of real estate, really, as long as it's got use.
Yeah, in fact, we were teaching some of our coaching students on one of our coaching calls last night about how to purchase over-the-counter tax liens and showing them some areas where they could buy these tax liens directly over the counter, where they're earning, guaranteed rates of return. Well, when you buy a tax lien that, let's say, you're earning 16% return, well, that you know what the interest year is. You don't need to look in the stock market and see, oh, did it go up? Did it go down? Did I lose money? I'm earning 1.5% per month.
Yeah, yeah, you know that you're going to make that rate of return, or you're going to get foreclosure rights over the property.
Yeah, and
You know, it's
once,
going to be one or the other.
and you know, and you're gonna make that rate of return until they pay you back. And then once they pay you back, you're gonna be able to put that money into a new investment. And then with real estate, you know, if you have the chance to buy real estate for a fraction of its value, then doing something like a rental can make a lot more sense.
Yeah.
Because you're not worrying about having this mortgage that you have to pay. You own this property outright. And even if you didn't, some of these deals can pay themselves off within a year, 2 years max, as far as the rental income coming in.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's a tremendous time right now to buy rental and rentable properties because you know, I think we're seeing you know, the real estate market changes, you know, but the rent market is high everywhere and it only seems to climb up. There's a lot of places where you can get a lot of property. I mean, where you can get a really good high rent amount, you know, $700 to $800 a month on properties that don't cost as much. You know, properties that might cost $50,000 instead of needing to pay you know, $130,000 in order to get something comparable.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So you really lots of places there where your money can go a little further. But there's still a lot of things that you can do right now, and we think that it should lead to more opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, even with the online auctions, you know, with the live auctions not taking place, there's still all of the online auctions. There's still, you know, around 30 states that are offering over-the-counter type opportunities. So there's still a lot, you know, really to keep us busy. In fact, you know, if you are brand new to tax sale investing, in this downtime is really a great time to get educated, to get studied, to watch videos, watch our YouTube channel, whatever. And so that once these sales start coming, you are really ready to go.
Yeah, it's a great time to dig in and get your studying, learning done. But also, there's still lots of opportunities that are still available right now. And yeah, the coming summer could be one of the best summers, you know, in a long time to be investing in tax sales because, yeah, we think there's going to be an increased number, and we think that's going to lead to some great stuff, some great deals.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, like we mentioned, there's over-the-counter opportunities, there's online opportunities. In fact, you know, if we still have some time, we could actually go look at some online opportunities and just kind of go over for a few minutes just to show some of the opportunities that are available.
Yeah, sure. I think we actually do have enough time here. Why don't we do this? Let's do this. Okay, let me make sure this is still working here properly.
Actually, one I would kind of like to look a little more into, because we just got just a few minutes chance to look at it, and there were some pretty nice condos, was the Miami, Florida auction.
Oh yeah. Let's totally do that here. So we end up using our site for lists because it makes it easier here for us. So we're going to the list center here. We're going to go into the online auction section, and then we're going to go from there. You know, we can choose the kind of auction we're going into. We're going to go into online tax deeds, and then we're going to go down here from California to Florida here, and then we've got right here.
Yeah.
And here we go. So what we did there, this is the online auction page for, you know, just for Miami-Dade County here. And now they also have all of their standard either bank foreclosures here, you know, that are available. Bank foreclosures and tax deeds are a little bit different. You know, you could say that bank foreclosures go through non-judicial foreclosure, where tax deeds go through a true judicial foreclosure.
Yeah, so
they're kind of separated here.
Yeah, so if we click on up to April, and we'll be able to see what auctions. You can see, like Shay talked about, the blues are going to be those foreclosure auctions, and then the ones that are in orange are the tax deed. We can see that it says TD, standing for tax deed, and right now they have 48 of 81 properties. So originally they had 81 properties, and this is something that happens before the auction is people come in and pay the properties off. In fact, that's part of the reason why we, you know, talk to our members and our coaching students about waiting until the very last, you know, possible minute to do the hard level due diligence or send somebody out to research the property, because these properties could redeem.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
And some of them will.
yeah, a lot of these people are facing foreclosure on the property, and so they do redeem, they redeem all the time. In fact, many of them will redeem, but at the same time, a lot of properties still end up going to foreclosure and will be sold at the tax sale. And right now happens to be a good time to be involved with some of the tax sales, but there are a lot of great properties that would work.
Yeah, in fact, in looking at the list, as we go down and look through a list, we actually use a strategy that we call the quick glance technique. Is we're looking through the list and we're just kind of viewing the information that's on the list. So we're looking at the opening bid amount versus the assessed value, seeing if it has an address or not. If it does have an address, that may give us more indication that there's a structure or home on the property. Or it's a buildable lot that already has an address attached to it, so it's within a newer neighborhood. But if we go down that, if we see the property is has an opening bid of $10,000 and it's worth $12,000, well, that's not worth looking at.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and one of the things that's nice about some of these auctions is, let me just make sure also we're answering questions here. Now, yeah, these ones. So these ones are all online auctions, and the online auctions have been pretty much uninterrupted. The live auctions have been postponed. So we're seeing a lot of the live auctions that have been postponed, but these online auctions are still happening. And so, yeah, in fact, and with some of these properties, all of these look pretty good if we were to look at them. They all have numbers. In fact, I can make this a little bit larger here if it makes it easier for people. All the numbers look pretty good on them, so we can see, $7,000 opening bid and $60,000 assessed value, and $8,000 opening bid and $72,000 assessed value. All those numbers look pretty good. If we start looking at them, each one of them, we've got a duplex here. We can see here how the property is listed here, the zoning, and it's a single family unit duplex, and we've got condo.
Yeah.
And we've got condo.
Yeah, exactly.
Condo, multifamily actually.
Yeah, exactly. And so as we're looking at that list, we're going to look at any of the properties that look like they have a good bid to value ratio, that fit within the capital that we have to invest. So if we had, like that one that was 42, if we don't have 42,000,
yeah,
we're not going to
automatically ignore it.
Yeah.
And some of them, the numbers are going to look different. Like for instance, right here, here we see one that has an opening bid amount of 63,000, but an assessed value of 74.
Let's go ahead and click on it. Because, and part of the reason is because in Florida, for homes that are homestead properties, what they end up doing is that one actually doesn't have anything. That's weird.
Oh, let me make sure I clicked on the right one here, because that did seem a little bit odd. Let's try this.
Anyway, what usually will happen is if there's a homestead exemption on the property, meaning
it's vacant land. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's the person's only home. Then what will happen is the opening bid has to be at least 50% of assessed value, and then sometimes they'll tack on the property taxes, which aren't as high within a homestead property because they only have to pay a little bit of property taxes on them.
Yeah, so you end up with properties where the numbers don't make nearly as much sense, although normally they'll be closer to 50%. This one's really high. But you can just ignore these kinds of properties, where the numbers don't make sense, and you can always focus on the ones where you saw profitability in it and it makes sense, to keep looking at it. And so here on this last one, we're looking at a single family house.
In fact, we could go look at least a few of these anyway and kind of see what they look like, street view, and then go through and see what type of Zillow value they're, just kind of get an idea of what the bid to value ratio is.
Yeah, let's take a look here at this. So I think this property here, this is the one on Washington Drive here. No. That's one on, that's a church. That one right there. We'll look at a different one here. The church numbers might be a little bit different. At least they didn't look that great here. Let's look at this one. 2050 right here. So this one's going to open up at 6,400. They value it there at 46. And let's see what the actual value of the property is, or what they're estimating it might be, so that we can get an idea. Because in some cases, assessed value might be really close, and in some cases, it might be way off.
Yeah, and of course, we're not going to just trust, this if we're actually going to do a bid, especially with any type of structured property. We always recommend, doing an on-site evaluation, checking the condition of the property, because the biggest thing with tax sale properties is we can't view the inside. We can just kind of peek on the outside. We're really judging a book by the cover.
Yeah, that's true. So, this property is one, it's certainly old enough we would want, need to do some, some evaluation inside of it, or if we could, from the outside, it's the best we can do here. We know it's built in 56. So what would really tell us if it's been lived in or not?
One thing as well is you scroll down there a little bit into the notes, you can see it has 45K in liens and violations. Now, I'm sure some of those are the tax liens that it's currently going for.
Mm-hmm.
But what that would tell me is I'd look to see, does it have any type of...
Look at that, occupied by squatters.
Wow.
Making it closing. Squatters will accept cash for keys. I wonder if the squatters wrote this.
Seriously. Well, they probably said, hey, you give us money, we'll leave.
Yeah.
And I'd give them $500 and tell them to get out.
That would actually be worth it. Okay, so they're saying that 180,000 is what they're valuing it at, but that's dramatically different from the estimated value on this of 46.
Yeah.
So, that would leave quite a bit of profitability in a deal like this, if you could make something work there with it. But then again, we'd want to do more research here into it before we pull the trigger on anything.
Well, and some of these, are a lot easier to determine because they're, just a condo within a unit that's pretty easy to determine what the value of the condo would be.
Yeah, now when we're talking about the bid to value ratio, by the way, what might draw our eye initially if we're looking at an auction might be properties that we can see that are listed for maybe 10% of their estimated value, or maybe they have a 10% bid to value ratio in their assessment. So like for instance, this property here, opening bid at 13,000, assessed value at 152, it has a bid to value ratio that's a little bit better than 10%. Doesn't mean that's what it's going to sell for, but it has the spread there for potential profit.
Yeah. Well, and even the one right above it, from 26 to 108, that's kind of where, where would still, it's up more on the top end, but we'd still look at that property because there's $80,000-$90,000 worth of potential profit.
Well, and if we were to look, you never know exactly what the value of property
what
might
the actual
be,
market value would be.
And so it could end up making sense anyway. But that's what we look at initially. Now, what we'll actually pay usually more comes down to what kind of competition we're dealing with directly in the area and what property goes for there, because it may not give us much of a choice.
Yeah, exactly.
That's one right there. When you see 36,000 for 345,000.
Yeah, let's check that one actually.
Again, it's about 10%. And this one is listed as a condo as well. It's a South Beach condo. That's what it is.
Sweet.
So it's South Beach condo. It's a 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo. That is, that would be great.
I'll bet it's worth more than 345.
Yeah, I'll bet it is too. In fact, I don't know how sometimes the condos can be a little bit tricky to find sometimes.
Sometimes they'll pull up.
Oh, there we go. Waverly. Yeah, let's see. We need to find the 2-bedroom, 2-bath ones that are there. If that's the same place. 1330 Waverly. Yeah, it is 1330. But this one's bigger though than some of them.
Yeah, I can't tell.
1611. Well, I know that some of these I think that they'll have listed for sale. You've got some smaller condos that will be listed sometimes, like a 1-bedroom, 1-bath for 156, and the 2-bedroom ones will probably be listed. They're listed a little higher.
You can find them.
Yeah, they are a little bit tricky to find though, but yeah, and really we're only on kind of the second page of this 5-page list.
Yeah, we can see 1,194, there's a bunch of good opportunities here that even with what's going on, there's still, auctions, they're still bidding.
Yeah, another single family house. Yeah, that looks nice. That's a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house. It looks like 13 and 167. This one here, we've got 5,000 and 17,000 with the vacant lot. Now, if the vacant lot, it could be potential, but
Yeah, if it was worth 25 or 30, it could be worth looking at.
yeah.
And some of the lots very well could be, all depending on where it's at, and also is it buildable?
Yeah, this one's another condo. There's a lot of these condos, that I think, could be awesome. And valued, they're going to be valued closer to, 175, 200,000 on a lot of these. They also, something else about all these condos is they have high rent potential.
Yeah, another one for 16 worth 200.
Yeah, now here's one we can see that has a homestead exemption.
Yeah, in fact, let's look just to make sure.
Yeah, so the reason why we can look at that and know that is because it's about exactly half of what the assessed value is, $74,000 opening bid for the 125. And it's
residential.
It's a duplex.
It says residential though.
Yeah.
Underneath land use, 1 unit. You scroll down a little further. Yep, homestead over there. They have 2 homesteads.
Yeah, the first homestead exemption and second homestead exemption.
And they have assessment reduction.
Yeah.
So, they're essentially paying $50,000 less in property taxes than they normally would. And so the reason they do this is because they want to protect the property owner, so that if they do lose their property because it is their home, they're going to have money, or there's money left over after the sale. Or if there is any money left over after the sale, essentially would go to them.
Yeah. By the way that the auctions, actually work is, each properties, they're basically auctioned off, one by one. And so, you'll be able to see what the property is rising up to. You can place bids in real time, if you want to do that as well. But you can also just place a bid beforehand if you want to do that too.
Yeah, it's kind of like eBay a little bit, where you can put your bid in and it'll bid for you, or, you could bid live and just put your bid in as it increases.
Oh yeah, and Abe or anybody else, you're welcome to ask questions anytime you want. You guys are welcome to ask questions here. We're happy to answer them. Let's see here if there's. Let's take a look at some of these others here on this page before we move on here. Now, some of them, occasionally we see bid to value ratios that are awesome. Like for instance, this one right here, this probably will end up redeeming because there's only $5,000 owed, and the assessed value on the property is $117,000. So what we see there is a bid to value. It's like 5% or less, and we can see this one here is for a condo. And so if this does go to auction, it's going to start at 5,000, but it has quite a bit to bid up. I mean, you could bid it up to probably 30,000 plus, 40,000. You could bid it up and it would still be a profitable deal because it starts off at such a low percentage.
Yeah, in fact, for those students or for investors that are new, essentially we're looking here at the county record information, and this is where we're going to be able to get a ton of information about the property. We're going to be able to see what it sold for in the past. Sometimes it'll connect us directly to the deeds. And then we're going to use that owner information because, to research the property to make sure there's not any type of governmental liens.
That's kind of interesting. So we can see here that, because one of the questions here that Mary had is how can one property have 2 homestead exemptions? And I think what they had is somehow they've got,
the property is valued high enough.
Yeah, basically every exemption gave them a $25,000 discount.
Yeah, I think it's because they were I'm not, would have to look into the record, but I mean, to how they do it, but I'm pretty sure it's because the home was valued higher.
We can kind of see it right here though, versus, right here, we can see this one had an assessment reduction, but it didn't have.
Maybe it's because they can get two because they're married. I'd have to look it up again in Florida.
All right, let's see here. Another question here. What is the difference between a bank foreclosure and a tax foreclosure? Really good question. So bank foreclosure, we call that a non-judicial foreclosure because it's basically a foreclosure that doesn't go along with state laws. It doesn't go through the courts. Really, when a bank forecloses on you, I guess on a homeowner that's become delinquent, they don't take them through that same process. And the reason why they don't take them through that process is because the borrower signed away their rights to a judicial foreclosure when they signed their mortgage contract. They basically wrote away that right to have a legal, standard foreclosure, and they opted instead for this non-judicial, which can happen pretty fast.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the most simple way, I guess you could describe it, would just be that a mortgage foreclosure is because of a bank and because of loans. Somebody took out a loan to buy the property, where a tax foreclosure is happening because of delinquent taxes. And just like Shade said, the deed type that's issued or how they're going to sell that makes a big difference, because when you're buying a property in a mortgage foreclosure, you are really just kind of buying the bank's debt in the property. So there could be a second mortgage on it. There could be, other type of governmental liens on the property. There could be things that still stick to the property because it hasn't gone through that judicial foreclosure. Where a tax sale, it's gone through that judicial foreclosure. So the only thing that really sticks to the property would be other type of governmental liens. Something like a grass cut lien from the city is not going to be eliminated through a tax sale, but a mortgage, a judgment, anything like that else would.
Yeah, in fact, that's really with a judicial foreclosure, or a foreclosure like that is a powerful foreclosure that wipes out things that are attached to the title. And so, when you buy a tax deed property that has just been through that judicial foreclosure, things that were attached to the property prior to that, there could be different claims or something like a mortgage. Those claims get extinguished, and that's one of the big differences there with the two different kinds of foreclosures. Is if a property actually goes through that judicial foreclosure, then it's generally not going to have anything attached to it. The only exception to that would be some kind of a government lien or something like that can still linger and be attached to it. But for the most part, though, they're cleared of all liens and encumbrances when they go through that foreclosure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so let's see here. Yeah, essentially here, these ones are all coming up. There's gonna be a lot of good opportunities with these sales. I mean, all these make sense. The numbers look great. But what we can also show here. Let me do this here. Anyhow, for any of those that want information or like more information to hear from us, or if you just need training, really, the membership, I think, is the best, certainly the most affordable way to get good quality training and lists.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what we did was we took the program that the seminar companies were selling in books and tapes, and we just put it online, and they were selling it for $2,000 to $3,000, and we just said, hey, let's just put it online, digital, and make it a monthly fee, a low monthly fee. And so, as part of a membership program, you're going to get access to all of these auction lists. So, as these auctions get rescheduled, as they have sealed bid auctions, all of these things are going on, regardless if it's a live auction, an online auction, or an over-the-counter list, we're going to have those available to our members of the website. So you're not paying per list, anything like that. Your membership includes the ability to download any of the list.
I see one question that I can see we have here. Once I buy an over-the-counter property, do I need to foreclose on the property or do I own it outright? That's a really good question, and the answer actually depends on exactly where you're buying at and how exactly you buy. See, property taxes and how they're enforced all comes down to state law. So in some places, if you buy, let's say, like their liens, any kind of lien is generally going to have to be foreclosed on. There are some deeds though that even have to go through a type of foreclosure in some ways, like like we see in some of the places where you have to foreclose on their right to redeem. So it's confusing. For the most part though, when you buy over the counter, if you're buying tax deeds, those are generally properties that have already been foreclosed on, and so you own it outright. But if you're buying any kind of a lien, then liens have a redemption period, and they generally result in either redemption or you can foreclose. And if you can foreclose on something, if you buy a lien though, generally you're going to have to foreclose on it, but you can't do that until after redemption period's expired.
Yeah, in fact, that's something that our training guides are going to break down, is the difference between a tax lien sale, a tax deed sale, and what we call a redemption deed sale, and then also how you buy those properties, whether it be through an online auction, through a live auction, through over the counter.
It's so confusing when you look at it as a whole, kind of.
Yeah, and that's actually the reason, and that's kind of what creates some buzz about our original home study program when we wrote it 10, 12 years ago, was that we figured out and we put together what we call the investor profile system that kind of breaks down all of these different types, because you're talking about 50 different states, 50 different states, over 3,500 different counties, municipalities. And so it can get pretty confusing. What the investor profiles do is help you narrow down a profile type, and then from there be able to narrow down the states where that profile is used. Then from there pick a state to get started with.
Yeah, it enables you to see what the options are, the different ways you can potentially invest. So when you choose, your investment strategy, from there we can basically say, okay, here's a list of states where you can utilize that strategy, and therefore you kind of know here are 10 states that I can look at. You can read about those different states, and then you can look at what sales and stuff they have coming on, and you can kind of narrow down your states from there until you've landed on a certain state maybe you want to focus on.
Yeah, well, and what's going to save so much time is trying to go out there and find these auction lists, because once you found an area, you'll be able to see which auction lists are currently there, then go back to the website and start researching the properties where there is auction list available or there is over-the-counter list available. And so, in addition to that, we also do weekly webinars, kind of like the webinar we're doing this evening, except for on specific topics, due diligence, all of the different things that are involved with tax sale investing.
Oh, and hey, thank you, Linda, too. We love to see you. We love to see you here. We love to see, I think over the years we've taught so many great people and had so many great people be a part of it. It's something we enjoy doing. And we want to thank everybody just for joining us tonight. We thank you for taking time to do it and for spending this time with us.
Yeah, absolutely. We appreciate it. So if you need some additional training, definitely check out the membership program. We offer a 30-day money-back guarantee, and you can cancel at any time. So if you only need training for a couple of months and you're able to get the hang of it, that's not a problem. If you see the benefit and want to stick with us for a long time, if you do a year up front, it's actually only $29.
Oh, and by the way, James, let's see the other question here. Who bids against me at the tax lien auction on a tax lien I own? So if it's a tax lien auction, normally that's where they're selling off those liens that people can purchase. Now, if we're talking about Florida specifically, Florida is a different thing because it operates differently from other states. So if it's Florida specifically you're talking about, James, then we would would have to probably know that.
Well,
because
and
they're
then also is
the
question is do you own the home, and because it says the tax lien auction, that I'm on the tax lien. So if it was at a tax deed auction,
yeah, the question he's asking is who bids against me at the tax lien auction on a tax lien I own.
So if you own the property, then you actually couldn't bid at the tax lien auction. If the question is, I had a tax lien the year before and I didn't pay the second year's lien, like I was the investor and bought a tax lien and didn't pay the second year lien, then that could be a possibility.
Yeah, liens can absolutely be used to foreclose on properties, and there are some states that sell tax liens that only have maybe a 1-year redemption period. So if you buy the tax lien, then it's going to result in either redemption or you can start pursuing foreclosure within 12 months. So there can be ways to be able to do that, but most of the time, though, it results in redemption. Most people pay it off before they lose the property to foreclosure. When they do, though, liens can be a way to acquire property through foreclosure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, anyhow, and one last one here. Let's see. Can one purchase liens or deeds from Roth IRA funds? You can do that. You can purchase liens and deeds, through I think through.
What you're going to have to do is you're going to have to make that over to a self-directed account. So once you turn that into a self-directed, IRA account or a similar type account, then that gives you the ability to use that money to directly invest in a tax liens, tax deeds, whatever.
Yeah. Another one is what's the least money I need to start to buy a deed? Well, you don't have to have big money in order to start buying. I mean, there are properties as little as, you can buy property for almost nothing.
Yeah, we've had coaching students and members that have bought properties for as little as $100, as little as $500. And so, it really kind of depends on the type of sale, the type of property. In fact, there's auctions going on right now, an online auction going on right now in California that has properties starting at $100.
Yeah,
so
which we've had members before, spend $100 for and sell them for returns, dramatic returns.
Yeah.
What 20? I forget what the whole amount was. Was it 2,900 for two? Yeah. Anyhow, yeah, it's possible to do that. But again, it's harder. Obviously, the more money you've got to work with, the easier it is here. So anyhow, I think we'll let everybody go here. Maybe we'll hold another auction though if everybody likes these. And this thing's probably going to drag out for another few weeks. Maybe we'll hold another one here as soon as we can.
Yeah, webinar.
Yeah, another webinar like this. So thanks everybody for attending, and you're welcome to send any questions in to us if you'd like.
Yeah, have a good day.
We'll see you.